Story. My ex, Jess, 43 female, was my 43 male prom date, and our first child, Adam, 24 male, was the result of our prom night. Jess and my parents took care of Adam while I was away for college. After I got my engineering degree, Jess, Adam, and I moved to a new city. We got married, and our daughter, Leslie, 16 female, joined us as well. Honestly, our relationship was, I would say, 90% good times up until 8 years ago. 8 years ago, my ex's gym teacher seduced her, and they had an affair. I learned about the affair 7 months after it started. She asked me to forgive her and that she would never see him again, but it was a big fat lie. One of my coworkers saw them together 8 months after we reconciled, and after that, I was done. To no one's surprise, the gym teacher didn't stick out with her, and she, for the first time in her life, had to get a job because apparently my alimony payments were not enough for her. In this job, she met another guy, Will, 54 male. She moved in with Will soon after she started at this job. By then, we were already divorced and co-parenting. Will impregnated her. She never wanted to have a third child with me. Their relationship lasted for 3 years, and after that, Will was done as well for some reason. During all these, I tried my best to be the rock for my kids. My son Adam is a very smart and studious guy. He got a very good scholarship, and I was glad he was away for college during most of the drama. I tried to shield my daughter as much as I could, but me and my ex failed in that regard. Will tried to force her to call him her daddy, and my ex filled her head with some lies about me being A. But by the time Will left my ex, my daughter was, and still is, on my side. Anyway, Jess and her daughter moved in with some roommates, but apparently they were not good either. I flat out refused to send my daughter even close to that house when they first moved in. The problem. In recent months, my unemployed ex, who was living with stipends from her family and child support, alimony expired last year, asked my son to help her live her life now that Adam is done with his master's degree. But Adam's part-time work while doing his PhD does not pay enough, and he also has a live-in girlfriend who is also studying. Adam asked me if his mom and sister could move in with us. His argument is that I owe her because she raised him while I was away for college. My parents did mostly. His sister needs her. She really doesn't care. She cares more about Fortnite than her mother. And he needs to focus on his life, so it's up to me to help him out in that regard. He also said his half-sister's father is an A, and she should never move in with him. I fail to see how this is my problem. I flat out refused, said he must be mad if he thinks I will let my cheating ex-wife to my house. My son, whom I love very much, told me if I can't even make this one sacrifice for him, what good am I as a father? He said that this PhD and his girlfriend gets all the attention he can give, and he cannot take care of his mom who is living 300 kilometers away. He gave me an ultimatum that he will never forgive me if I don't let his mom to move in my 3-story house. I tried to call him back after our initial conversation, but he is not budging. How can I convince him that I can't do what he asks? What your son is asking is completely unreasonable. He needs to understand that his mom is a big girl who should be capable of taking care of herself, and likely could if she just quit making stupid choices. It's not your job to take care of his mom. It's not his job to take care of her either. She needs a job and child support from her youngest child's father. If he's A, your son should report him to CPS. You don't. He's making demands to you about your property and how you should use it. You stand your ground because he's giving you an ultimatum, one that only benefits him and the woman who cheated on you, twice. He does not own that house. You do. He's an adult building his life. It's understandable that he may not have the time or space or money, but that responsibility doesn't fall on you because of those things. That's not your mother, and that child isn't yours. She stopped being your responsibility the minute she cheated the second time around, after you agreed to work things out. You need to leave your son a message and tell him that you've thought about his ultimatum and that you don't accept, that you refuse to open your home to the woman who had an affair behind you twice while you were providing for them, that you love him and you don't need his forgiveness because you haven't done anything wrong, and that you hope he can figure something out. To be very, very clear, My brother is 21 years old and has no disabilities of any kind. A few months ago, my father's twin brother had a heart attack on his 55th birthday. This really affected my father in a variety of ways. My father became insistent on creating a will for my parents, as his brother did not, and my cousins, who are my age, had a lot of financial issues after his death that I won't get into. Anyway, so last week, my parents came to me and told me what they would like to happen when they die. I think this is a pretty natural response to a death in the family, especially with my father's twin. So I wasn't too perplexed at this. However, they told me that they expect me to take care of my brother. This is beyond ridiculous. For some background, my brother lives at home. He only had one job his entire life, McDonald's, which is actually a very good job for him, that he got fired from because he kept calling off of work. He worked there a total of 1 week, when he was 20. My parents buy him cigarettes and beer. He doesn't have a driver's license or even a permit for that matter. He's a complete bum. He says that he's depressed, but so is half of the population. That may be an exaggeration, but you get my point. I have a child and a husband. I flat out asked them what the hell they mean. My mom said that they'd want me to take him in and let him get on his feet. I refused. He's 21 years old. When I told my husband this, he just laughed it off, agreeing. I know this is all hypothetical, but my parents are pissed that I said no. They're saying he needs help. I'm saying he's lazy. Am I a jerk? My dad asked me if I'd really not let him move in, that he'd be homeless, and I said yes, because that's the truth. My brother does not have learning or social disabilities. There are people with serious disabilities that have jobs, and imagine this, live on their own. When I told this to my parents, they ignored it and are just very mad at me. Am I overreacting here? Was I supposed to just say, yes, of course? They enable him. It's so preposterous to me. Any advice? I would suggest to your parents that if they're really concerned about your brother's future, they stop enabling him and buying him unnecessary items like cigarettes and beer, and spend the money on getting him treatment for a supposed depression. And make him get a job, any job. Ideally, he would build up some savings so he wouldn't be destitute if something happened to your parents. But probably he would blow the money he earns, because he's never even been taught to be a responsible adult with expenses. The foolproof thing as far as your parents taking care of him would be for them to start charging him a couple hundred in rent, then, unbeknownst to him, putting that money in a savings account for him. Someone like you could give him the contents in the event of their death. I would also point out to them that adults have to work to survive. The reason we learn to do things for ourselves is that our parents will not always be around to baby us. They can't expect the rest of the world to be ready to pitch in so that their adult son never has to get off his butt. It's not going to happen. And what if you and your husband aren't financially capable of supporting your bum brother? What if something happens between now and your parents' deaths, like illness or job loss? If they don't want him to end up homeless, then as the people spoiling him rotten, they better take responsibility for teaching him how not to become homeless. I will try to keep this brief. A couple of weeks ago, I got a pretty bad diagnosis. There's no cure for the diagnosis, only management. I feel, reasonably upset by this, as it means I will no longer be able to work in the field I studied and will likely lose a lot of my independence. If this diagnosis had been made in a timely manner, the problem could have been fixed. But my doctor repeatedly missed it, and that window of opportunity has passed. I got referrals from the Bar Association for several medical malpractice attorneys, and they all seem to think I have a strong case. My parents are furious that I want to sue my doctor. They are both doctors and don't think I should potentially bankrupt this woman for a mistake. One of my potential attorneys thinks my case is similar to a case a few years ago, with a payout in the millions. They keep saying that they didn't see it either. I actually do think they were also medically negligent of my brothers and I growing up, but that's a different issue. But it was my doctor's job specifically to notice and intervene. I get that she is human, and she made a mistake. I don't want to bash her face in or anything, but I also don't feel particularly bad that her life might be upended by this, or that it might end her professional career. My quality of life and my future have been massively impacted by her mistake, and I want her held accountable, Or, at the very least, I want a court to determine that there wasn't anything she could have or should have done differently. I'm kind of just looking for validation that I'm not a bad person for pursuing this case, and for strategies to get my parents to understand why I want to sue her in the first place. I feel like they are being more loyal to her as a doctor than they are to me as their child, and my world is shattered right now, and I need their support. Thank you for any advice you may have. I think you need to stop talking to them about what's going on. If you feel strongly that this woman caused you a lot of issues, then speak with a couple different lawyers and pick one you think will work in your best interest. If she truly did cause malpractice, then you have a right to ask for compensation. They are in denial about this, because if they were to agree that you have a right to sue your doctor over this, then they'd have to acknowledge that they failed terribly too. Your doctor only saw you for short spans of time and missed what was wrong with your health. Your parents are your parents. You came from them. They raised you. They themselves are doctors. For all the hours and years they spent around you, they managed to miss it too. The most important and rudimentary job of a parent is to keep our children safe and healthy. And even when your parents are both of the same profession who could have realized what was making you so ill, they didn't realize. That's why they're against you suing this woman. Not because they feel bad for her, but to support this lawsuit is to accept that, in their minds, they made that same mistake that will change your life for the worse too. My husband has been a mentor to my cousin for a number of years. It started when cousin became interested in music. Husband is an accomplished musician, and the two of them bonded over the subject. When cousin graduated high school and decided to study music, my husband gifted him an expensive musical instrument that his father had gifted him as a teenager. It was very touching, and tears were shed among the family. Cousin has a natural proclivity for the industry my husband works in, too. My husband arranged for his company to hire cousin casually while he studied. Cousin lives in another state, but husband arranged for him to work remotely, with flexible hours, at graduate-level pay. Cousin had several complaints made about his brashness, arrogance, and rudeness. He has self-diagnosed with autism, so his rudeness was reprimanded, but overall he got away with it. The thing that annoyed me is that while he is acknowledged to be very good at his job, he often wrongly assumed seniority over his co-workers, all of whom are graduates in the field which he has never studied. He traveled down for a month in June to spend time in the office, and one afternoon I took him shopping for video games and gave him some cash to help with transport since he was without a car. Our shopping trip ended poorly though, with no video games purchased, when he called me white trash because I mentioned my love of handbags. He abruptly resigned by email 2 weeks ago. His wording was a copy-paste of the briefest resignation letter template on Google. He ignored all my husband's calls to find out what was going on. I had a strange feeling and asked my husband to cut off his access from the system to see what he'd been up to. Turns out, he'd been savagely disrespectful about my husband to other employees in Hangouts, made borderline racist comments about another employee's accent, and generally awful comments about other employees' competence. When we cut his access off, he tried and failed to hack into the owner's login and another employee's. We discovered he solicited an ex-employee for contract work in July, has been double jobbing for that person, who we were already aware was trying to go into direct competition with my husband's company. Data security is obviously a concern. Finally, he answered the phone and offhandedly apologized to my husband for not picking up his calls. He lied and said he hadn't spoken to the ex-employee for over a year. My husband is refusing to take legal action, saying it would be awful to drag a wee boy down to our state to face court, and that he can't stomach doing that to a family member. He'll swear at him on the phone, but he won't sue the little bastard. The company owner is shocked and hurt. He had been a dear friend for years and a mentor to my husband, but my sense is that there's a distance growing between them since this incident. When I visit the office, I can feel tension that wasn't there before. I am expecting to see cousin's branch of the family at Christmas, and frankly, I don't think I'll be able to keep my temper. The little creep has hurt us and possibly damaged my husband's career. I need advice on what to do. given that my husband is so infuriatingly intractable about legal action, and I am sick with rage? Should I call cousin's parents? Send a vitriolic email to cousin? I am very close to cousin's older brother, and we are having dinner tomorrow night, but so far I have not wanted to involve him. Am I wrong? This hurt and anger is really eating me up. A wee boy? The guy is 20, not 12. If he was old enough to work for the company, he's old enough to experience some adult consequences. I have no idea why your husband is infantilizing him like this, but it needs to stop. As for you, don't conceal this from your family. You don't have to go into all the gory details, but you can absolutely say that there is tension with cousin at the moment because he behaved very poorly in his role at husband's company, and you're both extremely disappointed in him. Try not to totally lose it and start screaming, but do make it known. People acting distant or awkward but pretending everything is fine tend to drive families nuts. And revealing the bare bones on what's going on should lessen the temptation to start throwing the mashed potatoes at Christmas.